Hello there. This morning we are going to be looking at operationalising variables. So operationalising variables, I know that it sounds like a big fancy word again, but all it means is to make our variables, so you think back to yesterday's work, our variables are our IV and our DV, we need to make them as specific as possible. And the reason why is because there is a key feature of science called replication. So replication is something that, as I said, it's a key feature of science, and that we should, where possible, carry out research that allows for replication. So if our IV and our DV are not very specific, if they're quite vague, and somebody was using, remember the DV and the IV will be in our hypothesis, if somebody was using our hypothesis to try and replicate our research, and the IV and the DV were very vague, they might carry out a piece of research that was actually nothing like ours. And therefore there would be no point in comparing results because it's essentially two different pieces of research. So today we're going to work on how do we make the IV and the DV as specific as possible. So if we take a first example, and let's go with coffee affects memory. Okay, so that's our hypothesis. Coffee affects memory. Two-tailed, not very specific whatsoever. If we were to leave that like that, we would be identifying, well, our IV is coffee and our DV is memory. But if we were to leave that like that and someone else was to do a piece of research based on our hypothesis, you're going to get very, very, very different interpretations of coffee and of memory. So to operationalise these variables, first of all, we have to identify what is the IV and what is the DV, and then take each one and make it more specific. So instead of just saying coffee, what I could say is someone who has had no coffee versus someone who has had 15 milligrams of coffee. Okay, and DV, instead of just saying memory, I could think about recalling words from a list of 20. Okay, so can you see how much more specific our IV, we went from coffee to operationalising that as people who have had no coffee versus people who have had 15 milligrams of coffee. And memory, we've gone from just memory to recalling words from a list of 20. So finally, all we have to do is put those two together to create a new operationalised hypothesis. So our new hypothesis would become, and remember our hypothesis is our testable prediction, so we have to write it like prediction. So those who consume 15 milligrams of coffee will remember more items from a list of 20 compared to those who have consumed no coffee. Okay, look at the difference in that hypothesis and that hypothesis. So you can see, have we made our IV and DV as specific as possible? Yes, we have, because we've gone from 15 milligrams versus no, 0 milligrams, and we've gone from memory to how many words from a list of 20 will be remembered or items. So does our new hypothesis allow for replication? Could somebody else come along using our hypothesis, carry out the same piece of research? Yes, they could. Okay, and that's all we mean by operationalising variables. So I'm going to do two more examples with you. And I just realised I put a Q there. I'm going to do two more examples with you, and that's it. So, example 2. I'm going to take the last two from the work that you were doing yesterday on identifying DV and AV. So one was social class affects IQ score. Okay, so identify our AV, what's measured, our DV, IQ score, and let's operationalise each of those and then put it together in a new hypothesis. So social class could be I don't think how we talk about social class. Right, let's go middle class versus working class. And IQ score, let's operationalise that as no, there's not really too much. It would just be the score on an IQ test. Okay, so there are just different IQ tests that you can do. So putting this together, our new hypothesis would say people from the working classes will score lower on an IQ test compared to those from the middle classes. Okay, social class affects IQ score. Our new operationalised hypothesis, people from the working classes will score lower on an IQ test compared to those from the middle classes. Done. And our final example, first children learn to speak earlier than second children. Okay, so what is my IV? Whether you are a first child or a second child. And what is my DV? Age taken, learning to speak. So let's operationalise that. So the order of birth wouldn't be enough because this is more specific than just order of birth. This is only concentrating on first and second children. So IV, if you are first born versus second born. DV, age, learned to speak. Okay, simple. Let's create our new hypothesis. So, first born children will learn to speak at an earlier age. We could put there in months. How will we measure that? Months. Than second born children. Okay. First children learn to speak earlier than second children. First born children will learn to speak at an earlier age in months than second born children. So it's just all about being as specific as you can, identifying your IV and your DV, thinking how can I make that really specific so that somebody else could come along and using my new hypothesis, they would carry out the same piece of research. So you'll see again today I have sent an email with a worksheet on it, and again there's a couple of examples just to do at the end where you're just doing what I've been doing, identifying the DV, the IV and operationalising them into a new, more specific hypothesis. There will be no new work tomorrow. Instead, I will send you a few exam style questions based on the work that we've covered since Tuesday. Okay, cheerio.